Hi, I'm Nicole. I'm the Head of Technology Solutions and Delivery at The Bunker, part of the Cyberfort group. So my role is to work with our customers to understand their business challenges and identify and implement technology solutions that can accelerate their growth.
Hi, I'm Jim. I'm a cloud solutions consultant at Cyberfort, working in Nicole's team. So I'm here to help organizations build secure, resilient, and future-ready infrastructure.
Great. So Jim, it looks like data sovereignty is lining up to be one of the buzzwords for 2026. It's something that we've talked about passionately since the conception of the bunker. It's really heavily in our history. It's a core focus in what we do. So as a theme and a trend, we're experiencing a boom that's significantly driven by ever-changing legislation globally and geopolitics.
Definitely, I couldn't agree more with you, Nicole. Data sovereignty is obviously it's not a new thing in my mind. It's been around a long while, but I think it's definitely getting the attention of CIOs and CTOs moving forward, especially as you say during the global geopolitics that's happening. It's a very important topic that all organisations should be seriously considering. One of the things that I found is when you actually start to talk about data sovereignty, is a few people's eyes glaze over. They're not really sure what it actually means. And since working at the bunker, to me, the definitions. So data sovereignty is about laws and regulations that govern data. Now, that doesn't need to be confused with data residency. So this is one thing that I particularly struggled with at first, and that I think a lot of people will need to understand explicitly moving forward, is what is the difference between data residency and data sovereignty, especially with a lot of the cloud first strategies that people are implementing. There's a lot of organizations who are now obviously using the cloud, and they assume that if their data is in the cloud, it's still under their control. I'm not really sure that's always how it works in practice. What do you think about that, Nicole?
Yeah, I completely agree. I think it's those terms, residency and sovereignty, are really key as a differentiator. And when you look back, say 10 years, 20 years ago or so, when there was a real drive to push to public cloud, to native cloud first as a strategy, all that sort of good stuff, there was an understanding that the data resides within, taking Azure as an example, in one of the UK regions within Azure. So because it's residing in the UK region, that gives the sovereignty that the organisations need. But in reality, although their data centre might be housed within the UK, Azure Microsoft is still a US-based company. So particularly in the most recent years, where you have the US Cloud Act coming into play, that completely changes the jurisdiction of the data. So you have a situation where UK might be housed, data might be housed on UK soil. However, it still has the potential to be governed by the US government or organisations as a result of the operating company. So when you're looking at where your data is truly sitting, who can actually process it, that's real key to the security and to the operations of data, particularly if you think about really heavily regulated industries, the likes of UK healthcare, government, defence, those sort of topics. Having not just residency, where you're sitting within a UK house data centre, but true sovereignty, where you have control or understanding of how the data is processed and managed within the UK setting and the UK environment.
There's a lot to consume there. So yeah, Nicole, just to clarify on that. So even when data sits in a UK data center, such as our data center, the bunker, the ownership of the cloud provider can still actually introduce other jurisdictions into that picture, can't they?
Correct. And it all depends on the processing of the data. So within the bunker data centres, we are UK sovereign and we're giving UK residency because Cyberfort is a UK owned organisation. So from our perspective, there's full UK control. We're really suited for those heavily regulated industries such as defence. If you're using other applications within your infrastructure, ones that are managed by yourselves, for example, again, within our data centres, that could potentially be at the whim and the mercy of other jurisdictions, depending on the owner of the data processes.
Right. So something I've been kind of thinking about a bit recently is have UK organisations maybe handed a bit too much control of their data over to the cloud?
Yeah, I think it's really good consideration. I think, again, it kind of pulls back to that topic of what was done years ago and how is that considered for the stage that we're at now, particularly with so much evolution and development within technology. Um, there was a lot of consideration for the ability to be agile, the ability to scale. That is a big priority in terms of our infrastructure and our operations, and a significant consideration around reducing costs and that sort of impact. Whereas when you look at it now, actually, the way we're evolving, obviously, there needs to be global communications and networking across the industry. However, what does that actually mean for your data? And it always comes down to compromise and appetite for risk. So it's really important that there isn't a one size fits all. If you've got a small MSP that's doing sort of very local house work, they're going to have very different requirements to a massive organisation or government-led practices. So you need to understand what is the cost behind all of this kind of thing. What are you trying to achieve? What are you trying to do? Are you running massive heavy databases that are using a lot of IOPS and those sorts of operations? Are you doing smaller type businesses? Have you got specific regulations that you need to be adhering to? So you've got things like obviously just the standard ISOs and GDPRs, but then other very specific regulations that apply to financial sector, for example, PCI, DSS, or into healthcare. And you need to really have that balance between, okay, how can I operate? How can I scale? Where am I going to optimize costs if that is a factor? Because I think that's something that really hits home for a lot of SMEs in particular. They know what they should do in an ideal world and what is best practice, but the ability to achieve it within a particular budget that they've got is just potentially sometimes next to impossible. And particularly given at the minute, there's such a hit on hardware supply and demand, driven by AI infrastructure and a lot of hyperscalers and other large companies buying up all of the GPUs and whatnot, that prices have just absolutely shot through the roof. It's been phenomenal watching it and getting the quotes through of late. So public cloud and those kind of examples are the right fit for some people, but it's balancing, okay, what can I afford? And if the worst were to go wrong, what can I not afford? Is that risk worth it? And those are the kind of decisions that businesses need to be making.
Definitely. I mean, the fact you bring cost into this, kind of the bigger picture, what is the cost of data sovereignty? Organization, the biggest asset to organizations is data. I mean, you're looking at the AI boom, the LLMs, what is feeding them is data. It is so critical that organizations protect that data for the likes of ransomware. And it needs to be understood that the sovereignty does come at a cost, because you need to ensure that your data is protected and it's under the correct jurisdiction and legislations, and when it comes to compliance. It kind of brings me on to kind of convenience versus control. So everybody likes to use the cloud. It's very convenient. It's made it so simple for people to scale out. It's very flexible, obviously. But at what point does that convenience kind of chip away at the genuine control over their data and their infrastructure?
Yeah, massively. I think your point there around the value of data is so important. It's becoming such an asset in the world at the minute. And I think there's a few things to consider attributed to that is around the cost. Public cloud doesn't necessarily mean cheaper. There's so many ways where if you're not carefully considering how you're applying things, what sort of configurations you're putting in place, that can absolutely spiral. We've seen examples where people are just eating into their budget so early in the year because they haven't understood sort of the ingress and egress charges that might apply, or other consumable pay-as-you-go type pieces that get added on with their services.
I went to an event recently and they were talking specifically around SaaS sprawl. So software as a service, it's so convenient for people to use, Microsoft 365, all of the good stuff. In organizations, to me, obviously, we use SaaS, it holds some of our data, but the access that people can get to it. So I want to use this application, it's provided to me as a SaaS. All it needs is my credit card details. So I go, oh, I'm gonna buy that. I put my details in, there you go. I've now got access to the SaaS application, but my organisation are none the wiser to that. I then chat to the guy that I know in IT who can set me up an identity profile, give me the IDP details, and there we go. I've now got my organization's identity platform linked into a SaaS platform of which they have absolutely no idea about because it was done as a favor. That to me is a huge risk that organizations need to keep on top of, because you now have data that you had no idea about is being stored on a SaaS application that nobody knows about.
Yeah,
Now,
and I
what's my
think that's where the policies need to really be considered, shared, and not just implemented as a policy, but actually reinforced. So having that person knows a friend should absolutely not be the case. You need to be having proper control around the data and applications you're allowing within your infrastructure, connectivity, third parties, whatever kind of integrations may be the case, and having that strict enforcement is absolutely critical. And I think something really significant is that sovereignty doesn't mean security. So as much as you're looking at things like if you're hosting in the UK, that doesn't automatically assume that there's going to be the right controls in place that are actually protecting your data just because it's based in the UK. So you need to make sure that you're looking at everything as a full picture, that it's a complete comprehensive solution that's fitting your particular business case and your requirements to have not just a sovereign platform where it is appropriate, but a platform that is secure and protecting your data properly.
definitely? I mean, it leans into the strategies that organizations need to adopt. So let's say a sovereignty first strategy. Is there a way to design as a cloud strategy that keeps sovereignty front and center without slowing down the ITT or slowing down innovation?
Yeah, absolutely. I think this is where you need to think about your particular business case and your requirements. So you're considering the performance and the operations, what are you doing, and also you wanting to achieve. You're considering the security unique to those requirements and making sure it's fit for purpose and that it's fully appropriate. You're considering the supply chain in terms of protection, that sort of due diligence that you mentioned earlier around the policies, that it is actually being enforced both as a security measure, but also a validation for how you're integrating and what you're pulling into your infrastructure, what you're connecting and speaking to, and the cost. And you take all of those components, you understand the impact against your business objectives and your business strategy, and prioritize based on that. And security always has to be up there, but it's not necessarily always going to be the absolute top. Same with data sovereignty, it needs to be considered and thoroughly understood. And I think this is the issue a number of organizations are facing now, is that they haven't fully understood those implications of where they're putting their data and what access impacts that it might have. So as long as the considerations and the steps are taken to understand what is my data, what is am I processing, and where is it stored, that's how you can influence your strategy and find that you get the right purpose and strategy that's just fit for your organization. It's going to keep you secure, but allow you to scale and allow you to operate and grow value and generate revenue for your business. I think for me, holistically, those are the key things behind data sovereignty and how we need to consider it.
Excellent. Something that's always been high on my agenda is visibility. So data is not a tangible asset. It's not something physical. It's obviously is it out there, but you can't hold it, touch it, see it. So if some of it disappears, you don't know about that, or you can't tell exactly where it is because it's not physical. Some of the technologies that we're using at the bunker and are definitely emerging. I'm seeing a lot of kind of roadmaps into visibility into your sovereignty. So, a product that I saw recently actually will kind of give you a very high level view of where and discover your data and where it's being held. Going back to the SaaS applications and the SaaS that I mentioned earlier, I believe there was a stat that an organization, they asked an organization, how many SaaS applications do you have? And they answered 4 or 5. And when they actually ran this discovery tool, they found that they had 139.
Wow.
Which to me is absolutely staggering. So to me, that is where the visibility of this comes in, and I'm really hoping that your backup solution, your data resilience providers, the vendors there really do focus on that sovereignty because, as you say, it's such a key and important thing that people need to factor in to their business plans, business continuity.
Yeah, completely agree. I think it's the crux of it comes down to we're not in control of everything around the world. So making sure we are able to focus on what we can control is going to be really important to maintain that value piece that you talked about earlier. So I think as we look to wrap up, if you're giving one piece of advice or guidance to people around what is the most important thing to consider from a data sovereignty aspect, what would you think?
You got me there, Nicole.
I think for based on what you just said, it's understanding your data. So knowing that sprawl, where is your data sitting?
Yeah.
How what's happening with it? You need to know that and understand that landscape before you can take any kind of step to actually protect and secure it.
I guess yes, I completely agree with that. It's the having the visibility and the understanding of where your data is and who is accessing it, who is processing it, and not just the fact that where does it reside. That is not the data sovereignty.
Yeah. So knowing your data allows
Yeah.
you to implement the controls that are going to protect it, keep it residing in the UK, and also keep it truly sovereign.